The main character of the story is Seki, a student who is always focused on his own work during class, and while he's studying, his classmate Rumi looks over. She sees him pull out a bunch of pencil erasers. Rumi advises Seki to concentrate and listen to the teacher's lecture, but Seki doesn't seem to care at all. Then, he gestures for her to be quiet, and Rumi is extremely surprised to see Seki making a domino setup with some erasers while intently watching him play. While Rumi is focused on the dominoes, she gets scolded by the teacher for not paying attention, and she unintentionally startles Seki. He drops an eraser onto the domino line on the table, but luckily, Seki manages to stop them from falling. Seki, who was playing during class, blames Rumi for the incident. He continues stacking dominoes until he creates a massive structure like this. Rumi is very worried when she sees the final destination of the domino line is a firecracker. But before she can stop him, he pushes the first eraser, and the erasers start to fall one by one until they hit the button that activates the firecracker. Thinking it will explode, it turns out Seki is just imagining the explosion in his head. Rumi gets scolded by the teacher again, so she reports Seki to him, but Seki quickly clears all the erasers from his desk. The next day, Seki brings a sogi chess set to class, and Rumi is very surprised to see him. He even draws a whole chessboard on the table. Seki has calculated each move for his chess game, but he doesn't understand why. Right at the start of the game, his king piece has broken in half, and it turns out his king was betrayed by a general. Not stopping there, the traitor put on the king's crown to usurp his throne, and some loyal generals called for soldiers to fight against the traitor, but they quickly fell into his trap. After seizing command of the army, the traitorous general led his troops to attack another country. However, his entire army was completely surrounded by the enemy, so he quickly abandoned his comrades to escape alone. However, the former king was not dead yet, so he came to the battlefield to lead the army against the enemy. But the traitor returned to continue his usurpation. Rumi, sitting at the next table, was outraged by the traitor's despicable actions and used an eraser to shoot that traitorous general out the window to save the king. But Seki was very angry at her interference. They were having fun when suddenly she interrupted. This time, Ruby was very surprised when she saw Seki didn't bring any toys to school. But when she looked closely, she noticed Seki was cleaning his desk and had brought out a bunch of cleaning products that made it shine as if he were a professional cleaner. The first step was for Seki to remove the stains that had been on the desk for a long time, and then he continued to polish the surface of the desk, making it shine. It was so shiny that you could see your reflection in it. However, after cleaning the desk thoroughly, Seki had nothing else to do, so he insisted on polishing Rumi's desk too. But she stubbornly refused because she didn't want her desk to turn into a mirror like Seki's. Seeing Seki looking sad because he had nothing to do, so Rumi kindly lent him her table, and he cleaned her board until it shone so brightly that it could be used as a mirror. But the board became statically charged from all the friction. Thus, it caused both of their hair to stand on end the next day. Seki brought a Go set to class to play, and since she didn't know the rules of Go, Rumi was sure she could focus on the teacher's lecture today. However, she didn't know how Seki played, what kind of moves he made that resulted in a picture of a bear and a rabbit. And Rumi saw the bear fighting the rabbit, making her wonder if professional players played like this. Rumi tried very hard to concentrate on the lecture but ended up drawing the rabbit and the bear in her notebook. And after a while of intense focus, Seki had caused those two animals to merge together, intently watching Seki play Go, when Rumi was reminded by the teacher for not paying attention. So she reported Seki to him, but Seki had already cleaned his board long ago. Ruby had to show the teacher evidence in her notebook, but the teacher only thought she was doodling in her notebook instead of taking notes. Today, Seki brought a small knife to class to carve something into his eraser, and Rumi saw him making a stamp with his name on it. Immediately after, Seki carved his stamp into a cylindrical shape and put that stamp inside another eraser. So from the outside, his stamp looked just like a regular eraser, but the friend sitting next to him thought it was a real eraser and borrowed it. The eraser, along with the stamp with Seki's name inside it, was shattered into many pieces. Seki was very distressed that the stamp he had carefully made was ruined by his friend. And due to closely observing Seki's work, he copied the teacher's lecture. Seki's school would hold a drill when an earthquake occurred. However, Seki was not interested in the teacher's instructions and was only focused on playing with robots, and he even created an entire robot family. When the school's alarm rang, all the students in the class ducked under their desks, and Seki didn't care about this drill, but his robots acted very seriously. Following that, all students had to move outside to the schoolyard, and the robot family also complied seriously with the alarm sounds. While they were gathered in the schoolyard, Seki was happily chatting with his friend, but he accidentally kicked over the entire robot family. So Rumi decided she would take care of the entire robot family in the next class. Rumi let the whole robot family read books, and it seemed Seki didn't like this scene very much. Rumi saw many friends in the class throwing notes to each other, and when she looked over to Seki's desk, she saw a pile of notes on his table. Immediately after, Seki threw Rumi a letter from her friend Hasino. In the letter, Hasino informed her that Seki was currently acting as the post office delivering letters for the whole class. Rumi took this opportunity to write a letter to complain about the student life. While continuously working on personal tasks in class, Seki returned her letter because it was too large compared to the size regulations. And before sending it, Seki made her fill out a bunch of information related to the letter. However, just as Rumi finished filling it out, Seki closed the post office and wouldn't accept any more letters. And Rumi discovered that Seki had also done an entire mailbox for late senders, so she put her letter inside. But unexpectedly, when school ended, Seki went straight home without even looking at the mailbox. Seki continued to bring the sogi flags to class to play, and Rumi was very surprised to see him, as he had one pawn fighting against the entire chessboard. He even added another piece, called the princess, standing next to the pawn. Rumi realized this was the love story between the knight and the princess, and the knight was currently fighting against the king to escape with the princess. But the knight was quickly surrounded by the king's comrades. However, the princess came to the knight's side. They then vowed to always be husband and wife, and due to the princess's love, he was able to break through the soldiers' encirclement. But they captured the princess as a hostage to force the knight to surrender. Rumi, sitting next to them, couldn't continue watching the sad ending of this story, but she suddenly found a chess piece at her feet and realized that the piece was the father of that knight, and she was determined not to let the love story between the knight and the princess have a sad ending. So Rumi planned to flick the father over to the other side to rescue them. But this time, Seki was more alert and used his notebook to block it. Immediately after, Seki arranged all the chess pieces on the table into a sturdy defensive formation. But Rumi still flicked over his entire formation, and the father finally succeeded in rescuing his son. The next day, Seki brought knitting to class during lesson time, and Rumi, sitting next to him, felt very curious as she was also a long-time knitter. However, Rumi was very surprised when she discovered that Seki's knitting needles were double-ended, and only professional craftsmen could use those types of needles. At first, Rumi thought Seki was knitting a stuffed frog, but after a while, she realized he was knitting a cactus. Looking at the little cactus made Rumi suddenly feel a flutter in her heart, so she asked Seki for permission to take care of the little cactus. But Seki quickly pulled all the yarn away, thinking that she was planning to tell the teacher. Rumi then saw Seki pull out a tiny ball to play golf, and the holes were small openings on the tabletop. He even used a stick to aim for the balls like a professional player. Rumi's friend Goto, sitting behind, saw that Rumi was looking at Seki intently and thought that Rumi had feelings for Seki. At that moment, Seki was preparing to kick the ball over to Rumi's territory, and when the ball was close to the hole, Rumi accidentally knocked it out while shifting documents to Goto. Seki was sulking after that incident, so Rumi decided to apologize to him, and when the two of them bent down to look for the ball that had fallen earlier, Goto mistakenly thought they were hiding there to flirt during class. Then Seki pulled out a super cute little white bear, which made Rumi's heart flutter because of its cuteness. The little white bear was using a pair of binoculars to look at something, and it turned out that what the white bear was looking at was a brown bear. The brown bear was trying to climb onto the back of the boy sitting in front, and Seki was using a rope to pull the little bear up. Everyone was standing below, watching anxiously because they were worried about the brown bear, and the boy shook his body, causing the little brown bear to fall out of the window. Luckily, Seki managed to hold onto the rope and pulled the little bear back up. Seki wanted to attach the bear back onto the boy's shirt, but the boy turned around and looked at Seki with a glare, saying that if he wasn't going to study, he should let others learn instead. Rumi was very surprised, because this was the first time she saw Seki studying so attentively. But upon closer inspection, it turned out he was sitting there taking a driving law exam. Right after that, Seki created a driving test area on his desk and used a toy car to practice for the exam. He drove the car at a very slow speed to ensure safety, but unexpectedly, when trying to climb a slope, his car flipped backward. So Seki failed his first practical exam. However, after a day of practice that left his fingers injured, Seki decided to retake the test one more time, and this time, he succeeded. Seki even made himself a handmade driver's license, but he was so excited that he accidentally raised it up, making the teacher think he wanted to volunteer to go to the board. Seki bribed Rumi with a driver's license, hoping she would teach him, but Seki still insisted that Rumi had to take the test to receive the license. So Rumi flatly refused to teach Seki anymore. Today, Seki's class would have a lesson on first aid for drowning. Although Seki didn't care about this lesson, his 3 robot friends took it very seriously. Rumi was very angry when Seki abandoned the 3 robots to jump into the pool to play with his friends, so she arranged for them a mini pool to relax in. But one boy picked up the golden robot and threw it straight into the pool, and Rumi saw the robot stuck in the hair of the girl from Goto. So Rumi swam towards her. but Seki accidentally spotted that robot before she did. Right after that, Seki arranged for the three robots to play a game of watermelon splitting, and Rumi didn't know Seki had taken the robot away, so she was still searching for it in the pool. But one of the boys picked up the golden robot and threw it straight down into the pool, seeing the robot stuck in the girl's hair of goat. So Rumi swam towards her, but Seki accidentally saw that robot before she did. Right after Seki had arranged for the three robots to play the watermelon smashing game, and Rumi didn't know Seki had taken the robot, so she was still searching for it at the bottom of the pool. During lunch, Rumi was very delighted when looking at Seki's bento box because he had made the sausages look like octopuses. But he ate those sausages very brutally. In the bento box, there was still a pile of octopus-shaped sausages left, and they tried to save their brothers from Seki. But Seki used chopsticks to stab the three octopuses and ate all of them at once. Rumi looked at Seki at this moment, resembling a titan in some anime, and this time he encountered an octopus equipped with weapons and extremely powerful armor, but it was still easily devoured by Seki, who seemed to have had enough and decided not to eat anymore. And Rumi was very pleased that there were still 4 octopuses left alive. However, Seki shared those octopuses with his friends, and he even brought out his dessert, which was a bunch of rabbits carved from apples. In art class, Seki pulled out a paper sumo wrestling toy, and today Rumi was absent from school due to illness, so she would follow Seki's game. Seki was the girl Goto. Seki had a guy in purple sumo pants fighting a robot sumo, and after a tense fight, the purple sumo guy was defeated. However, Seki bandaged all the wounds for the purple sumo guy and the robot sumo, who was now equipped with a leg like a tank, so the robot sumo easily crushed the purple sumo guy. Koto sitting behind saw this scene and thought Seki was arguing with Rumi, causing Seki to go crazy in love, which was why he brought out these childish games. And while she was confused, she accidentally kicked Rumi's chair right next to Seki. Seki thought Rumi had died from fever and returned to remind him to study, so he quickly put away all his toys. During the lesson with the projector, Seki continued to take out his shogi set to play, and this time he would have the Japanese shogi compete against the Western chess king. But the teacher turned off all the lights, making the whole room very dark. Rumi saw the Kurasugi formation being completely overwhelmed by the chess king's army, and she noticed that the black chess formation was hiding in the dark to defeat Kurasugi. Rumi wanted to help the pieces by flicking the eraser like before, but it was too dark in the room, so she couldn't see the chess pieces. However, Seki didn't understand why the shogi pieces that had been defeated could come back, and it turned out Rumi had picked them up from the ground and placed them back on the board. But Seki thought it was a ghost, so he quickly cleared his entire chess set. Rumi was very pleased because she finally successfully made Seki stop working on personal projects, but her skirt accidentally got caught under Seki's chair the next day. Seki suddenly blindfolded himself right in class, and Rumi realized that he was playing a face-making game, seeing Seki create a typical sad face. So Rumi laughed a little loudly in class, and somehow he managed to create a complete face. Seki even chose a hairstyle for this man, but he picked a rough hairstyle instead of a nicer one. And that man also had a wife and a son. Rumi was very surprised to see that child growing up day by day, and their family seemed to be living very happily together. But in high school, Seki turned that son into a delinquent, like his father. In his youth, Rumi realized that due to the lack of parental love, the son had become a delinquent, and she tried to blow a breath to bring this family closer together, but she accidentally blew straight into Seki's hand today. Seki brought to class a deck of cards to perform magic for Rumi to see, but she firmly decided not to pay attention to Seki so she could focus on the lesson. Seki continuously performed a bunch of magic tricks to make Rumi notice him, and when she turned the next page, Rumi was very surprised to see an axolotl clipped in there. But she became angry right after that and crumpled Seki's card, making him so sad that he almost cried. However, she didn't understand why. The axolotl card just now got stuck on the pants of the boy in front, while the card that Rumi had crumpled earlier turned into a 6 of clubs, and the class ended while Rumi still hadn't finished copying the lesson, not understanding if there was a storm today or what. But she saw Seki wearing glasses sitting in class, and it seemed like he was very concerned about his appearance while wearing glasses, even trying to pose like a model. Right after that, Seki pulled out a bunch of glasses on his desk and tried on a lot of them, but it seemed he still couldn't pick one that suited him. The black frame looked very intellectual. This one looked like a celebrity, while the red one looked just like a superhero in a movie, even though pretending not to care. Rumi showed that she was very uncomfortable when Izaki picked the glasses that she didn't like until Seki chose the black jade glasses. Then Rumi accepted because when he put them on, Seki looked like a true intellectual, even though Rumi had gone through the trouble of picking glasses for Seki like that. But after that day, he never wore glasses again. This time, Seki took out his sketchbook to draw a flipbook on it, and it seemed like he had spent a lot of time drawing it after finishing the drawings. Seki even pulled out a recorder to add voice for for the flipbook to make it cool, and the way he worked was no different from a professional anime producer now playing. Rumi secretly watched, stealing the book, along with his voice, and she was very surprised, even dubbing the sound of footsteps to the sound of birds chirping until near the end. She heard a song ending that usually only appears in anime, but she discovered that the song was actually from a toy airplane commercial. Rumi was called to the principal's office by her teacher because her grades had dropped significantly lately, and Rumi understood that the main reason was that she had been daydreaming during class. This made her lose focus today, and the school decided to check the bags of all students. And Rumi wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to report Seki. However, when she saw the robot family, she felt soft-hearted and said Seki quickly hid them away after thinking for a while about how to manage it. Seki used a box to hang all of his toys outside the window, but the robot family still didn't know where to hide to escape. Seki came up with a way for the mother and child robots to hide in the bento box while the father robot climbed behind his chair. The teacher found nothing in Seki's bag, so he escaped this trouble, but the teacher found a CD in Rumi's bag. Rumi had borrowed that CD from a classmate. However, she forgot about it because she was busy worrying about Seki's robot family, and the teacher permanently confiscated that CD. Thank you all for watching this video about the anime. I will leave other videos from the channel here. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button along with the bell icon